It's painful, isn't it, waiting? It's awkward sometimes to wait. It makes us feel uncomfortable. But this morning, I want to look all about waiting. I'm not sure anyone enjoys waiting, and I think we're probably worse at waiting even more than we were, say, 10 years ago. Everything is just so instant. Everything's really quick these days. We're used to getting stuff when we want it. We don't like waiting. Anyone got an air fryer? Yeah. Anyone not admitting to having an air fryer but has? Yeah, a few more. We swore blind we wouldn't get one, but now we've got one. It's amazing because you don't have to wait quite as long as you would for the oven. Letters. Anyone here under the age of 15 ever written a letter? You're under 15. You're over 15. But you have brilliant. When I was first dating Vicky, that shows how old I was because I used the word dating. But when I was first dating Vicky, we used to write letters to each other because the internet and emails was just this newfangled thing that we all had to go to just one room on university campus to use. So letters, we used to communicate, and it used to take ages for letters to get from A to B, and you'd be waiting to see what each other had written. Now it's so instant. Anyone know what this sound is, please, Belle? Oh, it goes right through you, isn't it? Okay, shout out what that noise is. Dial-up internet, thank you. Please stop it, it's hideous. If you wanted to go online, you used to have to kind of press connect and wait ages for it to dial up, whereas now I can just get my phone out and I'm straight on to everything. We're not very good at waiting. Amazon gets everything here next day delivery. We're not good at waiting. And perhaps you know the uncomfortableness, the butterflies, sometimes even the pain in waiting. Maybe in waiting to hear how you did in your tests or your exams. Maybe waiting for your birthday to finally come round. Or maybe if you're older, not. Waiting to hear if you got that job or that promotion that you've been waiting for. Waiting maybe for a baby, which is 9 months at least, but for a lot of people is a lot longer too. Waiting isn't always fun or easy. But I wonder too what you're thankful for. I wonder what you're thankful for. Maybe very quickly just turn to your neighbor and tell them one thing that this morning you're really thankful for. Go. Okay, that's enough. Do you know, often I think it's true a lot of the time, the things, if we stop and think about it, we're most thankful for are often the things that we've waited the longest or the most uncomfortably for. Emma and Toby this morning have given thanks for the safe arrival of George into their family. But the thanks is that much greater because, as you heard Emma say, everything that was involved in the waiting for them. One of the things we often do when we celebrate something like a baby being born or a birthday we've waited all year to celebrate is to bake and, more importantly, eat cakes. So I just wondered if anyone fancied just coming to have a bit of cake. Try a bit of cake this morning. Anyone want to come and sample a bit of cake? Yeah, hope you come. Brilliant, thank you. There we go. Do you fancy that? No? I don't know. You don't know? What's wrong with it?
We could try a little bit.
I mean, you could. Thank you. Take a seat. It's not cooked. That is cake, but it's not cooked. We need to wait for it to be cooked and ready. So I wonder, Victoria, could you just go and sort that out? And if you head down the back and go and sort that out for me. We're going to have to wait a bit longer. Thanks for coming up. You're going to have to wait a bit longer for the cake. Now, this term, we've been looking through the early part of the Gospels and thinking about how we start 2025. We might have different goals for this year. We've talked about how we might stop more and gaze on Jesus. We've talked about how we might try less to earn God's forgiveness and favor and party more so that we can live in Jesus' grace and love. And last week we looked at how we might ask Jesus to come and mess up our categories and our ways of thinking and who we might welcome and spend time with. And so today we're looking at how can we be a people who wait around more. A people who, as uncomfortable as it is, learn to wait well and notice in the waiting what God is saying and doing. So in our story, Mary and Joseph take baby Jesus to the temple to thank God for him and dedicate him. But this isn't just a baby they've waited 9 months for. This is the Messiah, the Savior, the promised one, the one that the whole nation, the whole world of Israel have been waiting hundreds of years for. In fact, the Messiah is first mentioned right in the first book of the Bible, Genesis chapter 3. And they've waited all that time through to the New Testament. That is a long time to wait. And so for Simeon, this is the one, this baby is the one that he's finally been waiting all his whole life to see. God had promised Simeon that Simeon wouldn't die before seeing Jesus. And now, at a very old age, after all that waiting, Simeon sees God to be faithful. And all that waiting was worth every second. George agrees. But it isn't, you see, it isn't just the fact that Simeon waited that's important in this passage. It's not just the fact that Anna waited that's important in this passage, but rather it's how they waited that matters, and I think as a church we can learn from. Simeon didn't just say, okay, God, that's cool. Wake me up when Jesus comes. And Anna didn't just say, well, hey, that's great. You're promising Jesus. Well, I'm going to crack on over here with my life. And when you're ready, just drop us a DM and I'll come running. No, in the waiting, Simeon and Anna lean in to God. In the waiting, Simeon and Anna, we read, are worshiping and praying. In the waiting, Simeon and Anna are looking and they're listening so that they learn to see, so they learn to recognize the thing that God is doing. So many babies would have come through that temple to be blessed and dedicated. And it's been said, no offense to George, I'm sure he's kind of not including this, but it's been said that all babies look the same, right? Except that Simeon immediately recognizes Jesus as the one whom God has promised. Why does Simeon and Anna instantly recognize that baby of all the others? Well, we read Simeon and Anna clearly knew the scriptures. They clearly pursued God in time, in attention, in prayer, and in fasting. They were waiting expectantly. They were face to face with God in their waiting, paying careful attention so they were able to listen and see, even though it would have been hard, even though there'd have been mornings where they thought, God, are you ever going to show up? Even when there'd been nights as they go to bed, they're thinking, did I hear God all wrong? But they were faithful and they were face to face with God in the waiting. You see, waiting in the biblical sense isn't passive. It's not lazy. It's not a doing kind of nothing waiting until God shows up. In the Bible, waiting on God is active. And waiting on God means to wait with God. So I wonder if I can just have another volunteer, someone who considers themselves quite strong. None of you? We can wait all day. It's fine. Yeah? Hope you come. Thank you. Wonderful. What I'd love you to do, if you could hold that one in that hand, and if you could hold that one in that hand, and if you could face these lovely people, and if you could stretch your arms out like that. Yes, please. and see how long. Thank you. Wait there. Wait there. Wait there. Wait there. What's your name?
Harvey.
Harvey. You see, Harvey is waiting. He's completely still, more or less. He's waiting, but it's not a passive waiting. It's not like nothing is happening. In fact, it's a very active waiting. A lot is happening. Much more is happening than if Harvey wasn't carrying these burdens. A lot more is happening than if Harvey wasn't carrying these aches. A lot more is happening than if Harvey wasn't crying for someone to come and take those weights off him. This is what you call active waiting. And in the waiting, Harvey is being stretched. Well done. Stay there, stay there. In the waiting, his arms are being strengthened. Josh, can you just borrow your moment? Can you just stand behind Harvey? Harvey, would you mind just for a moment waiting again? And this time, Josh, would you just take the weight? You can do it wherever works. Just take the weight. In the waiting, Harvey is still being stretched and strengthened. And in the waiting, even as his arms begin to tire and he might feel like packing in, actually this time, he begins to realize that in the waiting, someone is with him. You know, it says in Deuteronomy 33:27 that underneath are the everlasting arms. As we wait, God is in the waiting as we're stretched, as we're strengthened. Josh here won't let Harvey bear any more than he can, which is just about now. So I'm going to ask him to put those down. Give him a round of applause. Thank you, Harvey. You see, for Simeon, waiting wasn't about hope that God would one day show up. For Simeon, hope came from the fact that God showed up every day in his waiting. And Simeon and Anna were in good company. King David waited 12 years, and before he reigned as king, he was hiding and running. Joseph waited 13 years, and before he ruled, he was laying forgotten in a prison cell. Abraham waited 25 years, and before he received his son Isaac, he had trusted even in the uncertainty and the impossibility of God's promise. Moses waited 40 years, and before he led, he wandered in circles. Noah waited 120 years, and before he sailed, he built, and he was a laughing stock. Before Jesus was raised from the dead and glorified, he was emptied and crucified and buried for you and for me, so that we might have life in all its fullness and know the presence of God with us in the waiting. It doesn't make waiting fun or easy, but biblical hope isn't wishful thinking. It's confident expectation, because you're not just waiting for something, but you're waiting with someone. And in the waiting, God shapes us. In the waiting, God strengthens us. In the waiting, God refines us. In the waiting, God prepares us. So what if we were to learn to wait around a little bit more? What if, like Simeon, we can begin to see that waiting isn't just about what we're waiting for, but who we're waiting with and how we lean into that waiting? Could it be that as we wait more on God, as we wait more with God, that he's actually beginning to transform us more into his likeness? Could it be that whilst we wait, God is teaching us to see and to recognize him and his Spirit at work deeper, rather than us just cracking on with our lives and asking God to bless us so we see what his Spirit is doing? Could it be that in the waiting, God shows us what his Spirit is doing and invites us to join in and live in his blessing? I heard, just as Harvey was collapsing, the oven timer going. So Victoria, could you just bring out what you've been cooking over the last few moments? And so just as these cakes have been transformed in the waiting, and we'll taste those later, I pray too that we may lean into waiting and be transformed in the waiting, that we may be a church who knows what it is to wait around. And like Simeon and Anna, we would know what it is to watch and to pray. Can I invite you to stand? Amen. And so we're going to do just that for a moment. We're just going to wait on God. God is already here. We don't need to invite him, but sometimes we can kind of just be more aware of him with us in the waiting. Sometimes we can ask for more of him to kind of burst through our distractions and our busyness